Some, like the owner of this private car, had done very well. This was the equivalent of the private jets of today's business tycoons. But for each one who succeeded, many didn't survive the cutthroat competition. What we have here is a railroad map of the United States for the year 1882. It shows every railroad then in existence. The country was literally crisscrossed with railroads, going to every remote hamlet and covering the nation from coast to coast. Between points far distant, like, for example, New York and Chicago, there might be a half a dozen lines that would be running between those 2 points. Each of the half dozen trying to get business would cut rates, and rates would get very low. The people who benefited most from this competition were the customers shipping goods on a long trip. On the other hand, between some segments of that trip, say, for example, Harrisburg and Pittsburgh, there might be only a single line that was running, and that line would take full advantage of its monopoly position. It would charge all that the traffic would bear. The result was that the sum of the fares charged for the short hauls was typically larger than the total sum charged for the long haul between the 2 distant points. Of course, none of the consumers complained about the low price for the long haul, but the consumers certainly did complain about the higher prices for the short hauls, and that was one of the major sources of agitation, leading ultimately to the establishment of the Interstate Commerce Commission. The cartoonists of the day delighted in pointing out that railroads had tremendous political influence, as indeed they did. They used the consumers' complaints to get the government to establish a commission that would protect the railroads' interests. It took about a decade to get the commission into full operation. By that time, needless to say, the consumer advocates had moved on to their next crusade. But the railwaymen were still there. They had soon learned how to use a commission to their own advantage. They solved the long-haul, short-haul problem by raising the long-haul rates. The customers ended up paying more, some protection. The first commissioner was Thomas Cooley, a lawyer who had represented the railroads for many years. The railroads continued to dominate the commission. In the 1920s and 30s, when trucks emerged as serious competitors for long-distance hauling, the railroads induced the commission to extend control over trucking. Truckers, in their turn, learned how to use a commission to protect themselves from competition. This firm carries freight to and from the Dayton, Ohio International Airport. It's the only one serving some routes, and its customers depend on it. But Dayton Air Freight has real problems. Its ICC license only permits it to carry freight from Dayton to Detroit. To serve other routes, it's had to buy rights from other ICC license holders, including one who doesn't own a single truck. It's paid as much as $100,000 a year for the privilege.
Our company is in the process of trying to get rights to go there now. Yes, we'll do that, and thank you for calling, sir.
The owners of the firm have been trying for years to get their license extended to cover more routes.
Now, I have no argument with the people who already have ICC permits, excepting for the fact that this is a big country, and since the inception of the ICC in 1936, there has been very few entrants into the business. They do not allow new entrants to come in and compete with those who are already in.
Of course, Dayton Air Freight suffers, but so do the customers who pay higher freight charges.
Quite frankly, I don't know why the ICC is sitting on its hands doing nothing. This is the third time, to my knowledge, that we've supported the application of Dayton Air Freight to help us save money, help free enterprise, help the country save energy, help. It all comes down to the consumers ultimately going to pay for all of this, and they are the blame. The ICC, it has to be the blame.
Dayton Air Freight now has many of its trucks lying idle, trucks that could be providing a valuable service. Far from protecting consumers, the ICC has ended up making them worse off.
As far as I'm concerned, there is no free enterprise in interstate commerce. It no longer exists in this country. You have to pay the price, and you have to pay the price very dearly. And that not only means that we have to pay the price, it means that the consumer is paying that price.
The price consumers pay when it comes to medicine could be their lives. In the 19th century, pharmacies contained an impressive array of pills and potions. Most were ineffective and some were deadly. There was an outcry about drugs that maimed or killed. The Food and Drug Administration, in response to consumer pressure, succeeded in banning a whole range of medicines. The tonics and lotions, with their excessive claims, disappeared from the market. In 1962, the Kefauver Amendments gave the FDA power to regulate all drugs for effectiveness as well as for safety. Today, every drug marketed in the United States must pass the FDA. It's clear that this has protected us from some drugs with horrific side effects, like thalidomide. And we all know of people who have benefited from modern drugs. What we don't hear much about, however, are the beneficial drugs that the FDA has prohibited.
Well, if you examine the therapeutic significance of drugs that haven't arrived in the U.S. But are available somewhere in the rest of the world, such as in Britain, you can come across numerous examples where the patient has suffered. For example, there are one or two drugs called beta blockers, which it now appears can prevent death after a heart attack. We call this secondary prevention of coronary death after myocardial infarction, which, if available here, could be saving about 10,000 lives a year in the United States. In the 10 years after the 1962 amendments, no drug was approved for hypertension, that's for the control of blood pressure, in the United States, whereas several were approved in Britain. In the entire cardiovascular area, only one drug was approved in the 5-year period from 67 to 72. And this can be correlated with known organizational problems at FDA.
These carts are taking to an FDA official the documents required to get just one drug approved.
Well, hi there. Must be the new one they called me about.
It took 6 years' work by the drug company to get this drug passed.
This one right here, all 119 volumes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
The implications for the patients are that therapeutic decisions that used to be the preserve of the doctor and the patient are increasingly becoming made at a national level by committees of experts. And these committees and the agency for whom they are acting, the FDA, are highly skewed towards avoiding risks. So there's a tendency for us to have drugs that are safer, but not to have drugs that are effective. Now, I've heard some remarkable statements from some of these advisory committees in considering drugs. One has seen the statement, there are not enough patients with a disease of this severity to warrant marketing this drug for general use. Now, that's fine if what you're trying to do is to minimize drug toxicity for the whole population. But if you happen to be one of these not enough patients, and you have a disease that is of high severity or disease that's very rare, then that's just tough luck on you.